You are watching Bloomberg Tech Europe. Coming up, AI gets physical. We ask whether robots are finally ready to move out of the lab and into our workplaces and homes. There is big money behind the humanoid hype. Can their technology really deliver on a potential $200 billion market over the next decade? A new era of robotics is taking shape. We meet some of the European companies determined to be part of it.
If you look at the physical AI space, it's tremendous. So it's like something like even I can't tell what happens in 1 year. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's fast. It's big. So and it's real.
We will be speaking to leading figures then in the robotics space, including Barclays head of Thematic fixed income research, Zornitsa Todorova, who says we are entering, quote, the decade of the robot. Google Deepmind's head of robotics, Carolina Parada, Neura Robotics CEO, David Reger, and Robotics co-founder, Joana Cartocci. Welcome to Bloomberg Tech Europe. So, are we on the cusp of a new robot reality? Today, we're going to look at what it could mean for the way we live and work, where the investment opportunities lie, and whether Europe can compete in the robotics race. Robots aren't new, of course. They've been building cars and assembling products in factories for decades. What's changing now is the intelligence inside them. AI is being trained to understand the physical world, and that could transform the labour market as we know it. Unlike traditional robots, which repeat the same task over and over, AI-powered robots will learn, respond and adapt to unpredictable real-life environments. It's known as embodied AI, taking specialised AI and giving it a body with cameras, motors, sensors and actuators, a machine that can interact then with the world around it. But it's also very difficult to build. The internet gave large language models trillions of words to learn from. Robots, though, they need something different. Data on, for example, how not to break an egg by holding it just doesn't exist, that data. So robots need physical experience of actually doing things. Every time a robot performs a task, manipulates an object, it picks up an object, it's learning, and companies are racing to collect that experience and build on virtual worlds where robots can practice and task millions of times before entering the workplace. Now, Barclays estimates that humanoid robots alone could become a $200 billion market over the next decade. So are we finally getting close to the moment humanoids move out of the lab and into the real world? Here's what Elon Musk thinks.
If you have billions of humanoid robots, and I think there will be, I think everyone on Earth is going to have one and going to want one, because who wouldn't want a robot to, assuming it's very safe, watch over your kids, take care of your pet, if you have elderly parents.
Well, let's bring in Zornitsa Todorova now, head of Thematic fixed income research at Barclays, who's been doing a deep dive and analysis for a period of time on the robotics space and the implications. Thank you for your insights. We talked about size and scale, $200 billion over the next decade. Just unpack that for us. What is the demand picture looking like? Which parts of the robotic space are you seeing the most demand for? Where are we? What is this moment that we're in right now? Is this a change moment for how we should be thinking about robotics?
Hello, good morning. AI is getting physical, and I think we are safe to say that we're entering the decade of the robot. The humanoids market is really tiny right now. It's worth $2 to $3 billion, but our latest research shows it could be a $200 billion market. But I think the bigger point and the key picture here is that humanoids is just one element of a much broader physical AI ecosystem, which includes drones, it includes autonomous vehicles, and other forms of advanced industrial robots. And so, taking everything together, we could hit the $1 trillion mark by 2045, and hence the investment opportunity is really sizable. But what I think is also particularly interesting is that this is a new investment opportunity that comes on top of what we've already seen in AI's first wave, which was more digital. This is the next frontier now. AI is getting physical. We have intelligence that comes to the real world, and that brings a whole new set of investment opportunities. And companies, industries, countries are very interested in this trend because the reality is that what we're facing right now is shortages, labor shortages that come as a result of aging populations, changing workers' preferences, and urbanization. And so we don't have the workers where we want them to be, and humanoids could be an answer to that picture.
So that humanoid deployment, is it happening now? Do we have humanoids that can operate in factories now that have that intelligence layer that allow them to do the tasks that otherwise would have been done by humans? Is that happening? Is that a now story, or is that a next year or a few years out?
I think it is a now story. The industry is just beginning to scale up. We estimate that in 2026 we're going to see about 60,000 humanoid robots deployed worldwide, and that's a significant step up compared to last year when we only saw 15,000 humanoid robots. And what's driving this acceleration is actually improvements across what we call the three Bs: the bronze, the brain, and the batteries. These are the three critical Bs that you need to produce a humanoid robot. And as all of these three Bs get better and more efficient, the costs are coming down. We've seen a 30-fold decrease in costs over the past decade. And I think we're going to see definitely more. And we estimate that by 2035, we might see about 13 million new humanoid robots deployed annually, and that's a very large number compared to where we stand today.
And we touched on the physical data and that being a constraint. Is that being solved? How much has been advanced on that front?
So I think that people often forget that humanoids is as much a physics problem as it is an AI problem. And the challenge that the industry faces right now is that we need to work towards general purpose intelligence so that these machines are really efficient, they're really useful in the real world. To do that, we need to take a step back and accumulate physical AI data. And the paradox right now is we just have a big shortage of physical AI data. The world has an abundance of digital data, but the challenge with that is that it's a bit tricky to translate that into real-world actions that we need to train humanoids on. So, for example, YouTube has about 280,000 years of video footage, but only a tiny fraction of that is actually useful to generate the insights that are needed for these machines to operate and to navigate the real world. And what we're seeing right now is that companies are working towards solving that problem by accumulating the data needed, be it through deployment in the real world, like we send the humanoids on interships out there, we collect the data, and then the next generation of humanoids gets better.
Does China end up dominating the robotics space? Do they end up leading and winning this market like they've done with EVs, like they've done with renewable energy?
So I think the short answer to that question is China has that right now, but I think that the US and Europe are still very, very much in the race. The reality is that China is the world's powerhouse in terms of robotics. It installs nearly half of the industrial robots of the world, more than 90% of the humanoids. And that did not happen overnight. It's a result of a decade-long state-guided push along the entire value chain, from critical minerals, energy, and key components such as batteries. But China does not hold all the cards. We've done analysis using millions of patents and innovations. And what you see is, yes, it's true. China leads when it comes to kinematics. That's kind of the physical form behind the robot. But the US leads when it comes to AI models and advanced chips. And now you may ask, where does this leave Europe?
Yeah.
Right? And I think that Europe's opportunity lies in high precision components and high precision manufacturing, because humanoids are, in many ways, like cars in miniature. They rely on the same set of very sophisticated components, in particular actuators and motion systems. And now if you take a step back and look at where these components are produced on the world's map, well, Europe lights up. Europe produces about a third of the world's high-precision actuators. Germany alone, 10% of the world's supply. So I think that if you put these numbers together, Europe and the region is very well placed and positioned to leverage its automotive heritage, its industrial past, and to become a leader in the space. So if you ask me the question, would Europe produce the majority of that 13 million humanoids that we expect deployed by 2035? Probably not. But does it have the potential to become a key supplier to that robotics industry? I would say absolutely yes. And this is where Europe's opportunity lies.
That's the opportunity for Europe. And it's a really interesting insights. Thank you for joining us. Todorova, of course, head of Thematic Fixed Income Research at Barclays. We've just heard then the investment case for humanoid robots and the potential for this to become a huge new market. How close, though, is the tech to delivering on that promise? I put that question to Carolina Parada, VP and head of robotics at Google DeepMind.
I would say not yet, but you can see it. You can see the light. In my opinion, it depends what you call the ChatGPT moment for robotics. In my opinion, a ChatGPT moment for robotics would be one where everybody can experience what it's like to interact with the robot, and the robot responds to what you want and does what you want. in a completely new environment or a completely new setting. So that's what it means to me. I don't think we're there yet, but we're getting there.
What gets us there? What are the technological barriers that need to be overcome to get to that point?
Yeah, I mean, this is precisely what we're invested on. So our goal is to build the intelligence layer that can power any robot and make it really intelligent so that it's intuitive for humans to use, so that it can do a broad range of tasks, so that it can make the robot smart enough to understand an environment, reason about it, and then take action to complete a completely new task that you might have asked it to do. That's what we're going after. I think that there's been significant progress over the last 3-4 years. I mean, before, robots didn't even understand what an object was or what their environment. They were just simply points in space without any meaning. We've actually introduced around 2022 LLMs and VLMs into robots that taught them what understand natural language. It also taught them how to reason about their environment and then how to take action in a way that was towards a particular semantic task or a particular meaningful task for the robot. That didn't exist before.
Humanoids get a lot of headlines. They get a lot of buzz. Do you think that's distracting? Do you think investors, the media, others, do you think we're kind of overly obsessed with humanoids?
That's a great question. I mean, we live in a world where there will be many different robot types. I actually think I'm very practical about this. I think that there's going to be a lot of tasks where a different form factor that is not a humanoid is the right thing. However, I do think humanoids are going to become useful and are going to be an important form factor for a few reasons. First, I think the world is made for humans. So if you want to immediately deploy a robot in an environment that is human-centric, then a humanoid is probably going to be an easy one to deploy. Actually, there's an interesting research aspect to this, which is if we want robots to learn from humans and the robot has a human form factor, it's actually easier because it can now translate what the human is doing when it's, say, cooking a recipe into what the robot should do in order to do the same task. So that's a learning perspective that I find interesting. And then the other piece is that my goal is to really show that we can get to AGI in the physical world. What does that mean? It really means that the robot can do anything a human can. So I feel like humanoids are going to enable us to show and really believe that we have gotten to that level. So that is another reason why I like it. But we care about all kinds of robots, and we're interested in bringing intelligence to all robots.
That was Carolina Parada, VP and Head of Robotics at Google Deepmind. Coming up, can tiny robots help transform brain surgery? Joana Cartocci, co-founder and COO of French Microrobotics startup Robotic, joins me in the studio. Stay with us. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to Bloomberg Tech Europe. New industry data confirming that China absolutely dominates the humanoid robot race. Its manufacturers accounted for more than 97% of global shipments just in the first half of this year. That's around 19,100 humanoids shipped in 6 months, up 272% from a year earlier. That is according to California-based Smart Analytics Global. And the numbers are accelerating. The same report expects almost 60,000 humanoids to ship this year, rising to 500,000 units a year by 2030. And industry revenue is forecast to almost double from around $1.6 billion this year to nearly $3 billion in 2027. So China is by far the biggest player in humanoid robots, at least for now. Unitree Robotics, hugely oversubscribed Shanghai IPO this week, underscoring the excitement around the sector. But European companies want a slice of this growing market too, of course. David Reger is the founder and the CEO of Germany's Neura Robotics. He told me this technology could be a new engine of growth for Europe's economy.
I do see like physical AI and robotics as the core economic pillar of the future. And in my opinion right now, the only way which is really right now graspable and possible for us to be, again, let's say, important to the world and contribute with something I think we're good in.
There's been a lot of hype around robotics in recent history. What do you tell investors to convince them that this time it's different?
The difference now is actually the AI part. So I think it's a core differentiator. Like we are seeing like the progress we have right now every day in our labs. Like even if you look at the physical AI space, it's tremendous. So it's like something like even I can't tell what happens in 1 year. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's fast. It's big. So and it's real. So you can actually prove today. So and that was missing in before. Before we had like great visions and like a clear idea how to make it, but you couldn't show it and prove it. And so for that you need a lot of fantasy to actually believe in that. And that was a difficult part. But now it's also reflected in our funding round right now. It's like that finally we could prove like every single part of this full stack like system and show it will not take 10 years, it will not take 5 years, it will happen in the next 1 to 2 years, and it will have huge breakthroughs in there.
In your portfolio of robots, you have a humanoid robot, and that's one of the most eye-catching in your portfolio. How much are humanoids about an engineering challenge versus marketing?
In my opinion, the core reason for humanoids is actually psychology of humans. So I do believe humanoid form factor is the only one every human understands. Because that's what I saw in my mother. Like my mother asked me what I do for a living for a long time, right? So I tell her every time robot. When I showed her like a robot arm being welding task, she wasn't excited about it. So I saw in her face she actually expressed like, that's not a robot. But since I shown her like a humanoid, she has a lot of ideas what this device can do and what it should do. So I do believe it's easier to build a robot on legs than actually changing psychology of humanity. So, and that's, in my opinion, the main driver for it. And then the other things like the whole world around us is basically ergonomically made for humans and I think it makes sense to simply build a robot which is human-like and can just go in and take over the task which humans do.
Is the biggest opportunity actually in physical work? Is physical work where we're going to see the most disruption as a result of AI and robotics?
I think physical AI and robotics will take every physical task. So there will be no acceptance. And I'm not talking about 10 years. I'm talking about the next 2 to 5 years. So, and the reason for that is it's very simple to explain. It's actually the time to skill. Like simply, I can already prove today that I can train my robot a lot of really complicated tasks faster than I can train a human for that. And with a much better reliability and at the same time also, precision and whatever. So this means actually, and I use a couple of hours to training. So, and that's also why I'm saying like the approach we are doing right now and our main KPI, we are measuring everything is the time to skill. Because this will define actually where we use robots in the future.
David Reger, CEO and founder of Neura Robotics. So we've seen how robotics promises to change so many aspects of our lives. Of course, it also has the potential to transform healthcare. Robeauté is a medical device company building what it calls the first micro-robotic platform. The French startup is aiming to better understand and treat brain disease by using micro-robots the size of a grain of rice. I'm joined now by Joana Cartocci, co-founder and COO of Robotic. Joana, lovely to see you again. Talk us about what you're doing, because this is real now. You've gone through the research and development phase. You now have a product. You have to get regulatory approval, of course, but you've made significant advances. What is it you're trying to solve, and what is the robot that you're using to do that?
Well, thank you for having me. Robeauté, as you mentioned earlier, is a company that is developing a novel solution for brain disease for the 1 in 3 people affected worldwide. So this is cancer, neurodegenerative disorders, Parkinson, Alzheimer's, different kinds of dementia, epilepsy. And today there is a real physical bottleneck that has impeded, that has stifled innovation in the brain for the past decades, and that is physical access. So we are unlocking the brain physically by providing a small, tiny device that can navigate through brain tissue to deliver novel tools and therapeutics in the brain to treat these diseases. And yes, since last time we spoke, we have retired quite a bit of risk. We have progressed through our R&D, as you mentioned, manufacturing, upscaled manufacturing, built a formidable team. We've doubled in size over the past year, and we're well engaged in our preclinical preclinical studies and gearing up for our clinical now.
Okay, so that brings us on to the timeline question. And I know that you work closely with the FDA, the regulators, of course, in the US and elsewhere.
Yes.
What is the time frame? It sounds like science fiction, but you're ensuring that it's not going to be, that it's going to be real and real practical uses. When does this become a market opportunity?
Well, the new decade is extremely exciting. So we're aiming for that. We're aiming for early 30s to be on the market, and the ambition is really to work with regulators in different geographies in Europe as well as in the US to make sure this product gets to patients safely and the fastest way possible.
It's also about drug delivery, potentially, at some point. Talk to us about that potential.
It's actually a massive opportunity, Tom, because as I was mentioning earlier, there is a real physical bottleneck. And here it's an element of everything we've heard of today, the intelligence and the physical layer. NVIDIA is such an incredible company, and the real edge it has is it's nourishing this entire AI revolution, right, with the physical layer. We're doing the same thing. Today, there are massive advances in not only AI and intelligence, but also in novel drugs, novel therapies, gene therapies, cell therapies, electrodes, and they all lack a way of physically being delivered locally with the right precision in the brain, exactly where they need to go and nowhere else. And so for drugs specifically, there's what we call the blood-brain barrier that separates whatever is in the blood from healthy tissue in the brain, but also when something goes wrong in the brain, drugs can't go past the blood-brain barrier with the right concentration. So we're going to be delivering them locally and enabling a whole new aperture for
We're talking about a convergence of AI-discovered drugs and robotics in this vision. How well-placed is Europe when it comes to robotics?
I find Europe extremely exciting. We have an incredible mix of talent. We have a robotics heritage in Europe. We have the most incredible research centers in Europe around robotics. We have real talent, especially when it comes to microrobotics specifically. I think Europe has a larger challenge of working together because we compare ourselves to Asia or like the Chinese market you were saying earlier, or to the US, but the truth of the matter is that we still act like a fragmented market. Even though we have a unified certification that could be a little bit faster, smoother, and with a more collaborative approach, once you do get a CE mark, you still have to access all these markets independently, one from the other. So we need to work collaboratively and almost to have a uniformed access to the market too.
Okay.
That would be very helpful.
In human studies 2027, and then potentially on the market by 2030, is that right in terms of the cadence?
Yes. It's definitely a staged approach. And even when it comes to applications, we start from one application, advanced tumor biopsy, to go and collect tissue to prove the safety of the approach. A microrobot moving through the brain sounded like science fiction yesterday. So this is extremely exciting. We start with something quite simple, and then we expand use cases too.
Joana, thank you very much indeed. Joana Cartocci, co-founder and COO of Roboté. That is it for this edition of Bloomberg Tech Europe. In the next episode, we're going to explore the future of health then in more detail, how advances in tech can help us live longer and better lives. That's on September the 11th, so do join us for that. The Pulse is up next. This is Bloomberg.